Alright guys, so I don't know if it's going to be possible to predict what's going to happen. I keep trying, but I can't think of the end game. The end game is going to be some sort of unavoidable war for sure. But there's definitely hierarchies of power here. And so I thought it was the sovereigns and the rulers. And the rest was mysterious. And we thought that the fragments of the most brilliant light had to do with the rulers and borrowing the ruler's power. However, I'm not so sure about that anymore. Now I think there's 3 warring classes. But let's not start there. We'll work our way up to that. This is some of the stuff we know. We got sovereigns versus fragments of the most brilliant light. The sovereigns are hunting down the fragments of the most brilliant light, which aren't necessarily the ones borrowing the ruler's power. We'll get into that. So the fragments are first, all the sovereigns have a way to create gates for transportation, and all transporting gates are small and black. So these fragments, the fragments of the most brilliant light, are all inhuman hunters, it seems, and it seems there's also 9 of them. So Kamish only knew of 4 because 4 of them were in there at the time fighting it. Or they actually could have got the powers from the rulers mid-battle. Because listen to what Thomas Andre said. Thomas Andre had a lot of power since he first awakened. They made that clear. But it said, and I quote, "However, the heavens saw fit to bestow a certain gift that could only be described as unprecedented unto this white kid who seemingly possessed nothing." Okay, that's the initial rank S awakening. Then it talks about him testing those powers out, beating people up, etc. Then getting influence, fame, wealth, whatever. Then after all that, and I quote, "when a completely different type of power manifested into this world, he grasped the opportunity and ascended to the status of a true king." So is that a reawakening? Or somehow he borrowed the power of the rulers, as Kamish said. I thought it was weird. A bunch of hunters went into that S-rank Kamish dungeon, but only 5 came out, including a tanker, Thomas Andre. Tankers are supposed to protect the healers at all costs. So what happened there? Also, from what we've heard, they were more powerful when they came out than when they went in. And we know it doesn't work like that unless you're Jin Woo. So, what's going on here? Well, yeah, it doesn't work like that unless you're Jin Woo, or you get a reawakening, or some crazy reality hacked broken being grants you some kind of power or something somehow. So I also have proof of this because another S-Gate opened in America and Christopher Reed wouldn't participate because he believed that Andre alone would be enough. But gates are getting more intense, so where is that confidence coming from? They knew that they got new powers, but beyond that, they don't seem to know anything else at all. So let's look at this. There's 9 sovereigns, 9 fragments, and 9 magispheres. So people, or these humans who lost their ego, who merged with the sovereign, automatically gained the knowledge and full powers of the sovereign and wanted to kill the fragments of the brilliant light or hunt them down. Now, so like that, the Sovereign of Frost, he said he merged with his original body, which was that crazy ice elf thing. And then someone like the King of Giants, obviously he found a human body, and when he merged with it and lost his ego, it became a spiritual body, still looking like a human one though. So let's see here. We got more to go. Gogun He and Christopher Reed, they kept their egos, but both also ended up trying to team up with Jin Woo in the end. So that's a little connection. We've seen an ice-wielding sovereign and a fire-wielding fragment. Go-Gun-He seem to be using a light type attack, and Jinwoo is of course the darkness. So for each of the 9 sovereigns, there may be a fragment that can potentially combat it. So it's like opposites, but we don't know that for sure yet. But that may be, yeah, that might be far off from the mark, so we'll have to see about that. So why did the Frost Sovereign fight the Light? Well, because Jinwoo hadn't contacted them, I suppose. They probably wanted the Dark to fight the Light, but since the Frost Sovereign made clear that Jinwoo hadn't contacted them, and he should have contacted them, of course he was assuming that Jinwoo lost his ego. Well, they had to send someone to go fight Go-Gun-He, so they sent the Ice Elf thing. They had a name for it. It's a little crazier than an Ice Elf, but whatever. Now, when that blonde sovereign went and killed Christopher Reed, it seems there was a fragment of the Brilliant Light helping him do so, in his group of 3 people. So I believe the Special Authority rank hunters are fragments, but they may also be different somehow, able to borrow the ruler's power. So they're one or the other. Yeah, in fact, when you think about it, yeah, once everyone died in that Kamish dungeon, they came out different. I think there's at least 4 of them borrowing the ruler's power, and that they're not the fragments of light. So after all this time, can we actually make a theory that might make sense with all the information we've got? Well, we'll see how far we can get. It's crazy because I keep thinking I'm going to be able to make a theory here, but we get more information and it just kind of baffles us further. Or we hear that, oh, that information, yeah, that was a little wrong. It's actually like this. So as long as the show doesn't end up contradicting itself, I'll be okay with that. Alright, so I almost don't want to get into bringing up that dang angel statue, because there's so many seeming contradictions to him. One other person has contradictions also, the King of Giants. He said he'd help Jinwoo's cause and fight alongside him, and that was supposed to be the truth. But he wasn't on the side of humans, apparently. He was a sovereign who was a human, I guess, but then lost his ego and gained all the powers of the King of Giants. But apparently he got, instead of helping them kill the fragments of light, somehow he got jumped by the rulers or ran into them and tried to fight them and lost and got tied up in that dungeon. So he, of course, had a monster's energy signature. Does that remind us of anyone? Jinwoo's dad, as well, supposedly has a monster's energy signature. Did he get chosen to become a sovereign while trapped in that dungeon? I assume after closing the gate, the dungeon went back to Chaos World. His dad was either between E and A rank at the time, or he was a false ranker. Or he could have been a player, but like Jinwoo, but I don't know about that. He didn't have a magic crystal in his neck, and he didn't kill any humans after coming out of the gate in America. But neither did the other sovereigns that were on Jeju Island. They're just going around hunting specific, very powerful people with the fragments of light. So, back to the King of Giants. He said because Jinwoo had that power, it meant the Shadow Lord had already betrayed the sovereigns. But he obviously knew nothing about the system. That much was clear. None of the fragments of the Most Brilliant Light know about the system either, and none of the egoless sovereigns know about it. All of the sovereigns hunting down fragments know of the coming war. They know why they have their powers and who they are. The sovereign spirit has merged into new bodies able to inhabit the Chaos World and the human world. Jinwoo's different though. He's not a sovereign. He's a player. Or the player. He might be the only one. Yeah, so that might be more correct to say he's the player. His dad seems to be a sovereign, more likely than a fragment. His dad seems to be a sovereign, or more likely a fragment, like Go-Gun-He. But if he's a fragment, it doesn't make any sense. Somehow, while in the Chaos World, he learned the truth of his powers and the coming war. Yeah, so most of the fragments, or all the fragments we've seen, they don't know anything about themselves or their powers. They're just acting like humans who are super strong S-rank hunters. But when Jinwoo's dad was in the Chaos World, he might have learned the truth about his powers if he was a fragment, and the coming war, and the current war between the fragments and the sovereigns. And that's why Jinwoo's dad was in Japan, to kill the King of Giants. So I think he's a fragment with the knowledge and his original will. But why a monster's energy? Is he a sovereign and a fragment at the same time? Yeah, I know that sounds crazy, but it's really the only way we can make sense of this from what we know. So what if Jinwoo's dad's magic energy simply just changed after being in the Chaos World for so long? You know, we don't know too much about it, but it seems to be a place full of magic crystals and magic energy, and, you know, denizens of the Chaos World, which would be monsters. So it makes perfect sense if he was there for a long time, his energy would completely change. And he was working under some ruler or denizen with knowledge, maybe, and authority. You could probably get reawakened just from entering the Chaos World, the source of Earth's magic energy, right? So I'm not sure how the King of Giants was telling the truth and lying at the same time, but he probably meant he'll help the sovereigns and fight alongside Jinwoo for that cause, the cause of beating the rulers or something. I don't know how that spell works and what kind of little things you can do to hack it or cheat on it, but apparently the King of Giants did. Jinwoo's dad wants to protect his son, and if Jinwoo needed help killing the King of Giants, his dad probably would have helped. But what if he freed the King of Giants? Would his dad have supported that too? Or told Jinwoo something and then his dad would have tried to kill the King of Giants? So that's interesting to think about. I think he would have killed the King of Giants even if Jinwoo tried to free him, because he knows the truth. But it's weird that he's not contacting Jinwoo yet. But at the same time, he was in Japan when Jinwoo was in there, we assume, when he was watching him. So I think Jinwoo's dad is against the sovereign agenda. I think being in the Chaos World changed his energy and possibly gave him an insane reawakening, or even became a fragment of the most brilliant light. Next, I think Jinwoo's dad helped persuade some powerful denizen or ruler or sovereign to make Jinwoo the player. I believe Jinwoo isn't a part of the 9 sovereigns at all. He's just the he just has the Shadow Sovereign's power via the #broken system. Is Jinwoo's mom significant? I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't think she is, but we never know. That could be a factor. The system gave him blessed and cursed random boxes, both with instant dungeon keys. The blessed one would give him something he wants, and that was the one, the gate to hell or whatever. So he went and fought the gate to hell, and he leveled up and he got some cool stuff there. And then the cursed box gave him something he needs, and that's when he went to the demons dungeon and he got some information out of them. He got a lot of information at the time. Of course, the system said, no, you can't get that much information. Sorry about that. We're cutting her off right here. So that's so weird. The system can literally like just shut denizens' mouths. So it has to be... I've never seen the system literally cut a human off from talking. It looks like it can't control other humans except for Jinwoo. But it can control denizens, at least in the instant dungeons. And the denizens themselves are like, whoa, what the heck? And they're hearing voices in the back of their head to protect the instant dungeon, but we don't see any crystals in the back of their neck or anything. So this system thing is definitely coming from the Chaos World, or from the great beings and the most brilliant light itself. Now, so the fact that the angel statue knew basically nothing about Jinwoo or what he's been through shows he definitely wasn't the true operator. He was just told to test him and show the system playback. Then he was supposed to just wait for the king, aka Jinwoo, as the real Shadow Sovereign. In the playback, the Shadow Sovereign told Baran, the king of the demons, "We could have ended the war with them today." And Baran was leaning on what, quote unquote, a bizarre rock formation. I don't know if that's important, but I don't see any reason for saying that unless it has some sort of significance. You know, so I'm thinking like that took place in a different world than Earth, that system playback war, and there was just strange rocks on that world or something. So when Jinwoo beat the instant dungeon, the demon's castle, and left some survivors, did that affect the other Baron and his view of the atypical Shadow Sovereign? We still can't say, but Baran's reply was, "So regrettable. We could have ended you for good today." What? And the Shadow Sovereign's like, I thought we were bros, so what's up? Like, what got into you, man? What happened? And he asked again, puzzled, "Why'd you betray me?" The Shadow Sovereign just wanted to know why he betrayed him. Like they were good old pals, and he's like, "We could have ended this war with them today, I guess the rulers." And then the Demon King's like, "I could have ended you today. What a shame, it's regrettable." And the Shadow Sovereign's like, "What? What's going on here?" So, it seems like there's some ripples. When Jinwoo does something in an instant dungeon, it sends ripples into the Chaos World or something. I'm not sure if I'm really not sure. I mean, he killed the King of the Demons, and then all of a sudden we see the King of the Demons here, getting killed by the Shadow Sovereign, the atypical Shadow Sovereign. So it's hard to say. Alright, we got a little more to go here, and then we're going to try to form an actual theory. So not only is Jinwoo causing ripples, it seems there's some divisions in the hierarchy of the rulers, and they're probably lying to each other and their underlings, and there's probably a battle of power between the rulers themselves as well. And I think a lot of the rulers themselves have different agendas. Also, when Baran speaks to the Shadow Sovereign, it uses characters in place of letters. And at first I didn't think anything of it, but actually it gets really interesting. Check this out. So they're using like hashtag, money sign, percent sign hashtag, and I thought that those all might be a single letter, but looking at how many hashtags are in one sentence, I don't think that's the case. But if you assume that each of those characters is a letter, but the hashtag doesn't always have to be the same letter, well, I don't know, we could put this in there. Check this out. So you got these. These are the three things that he couldn't hear the Demon King saying. Fill in the blanks. You can put Song Jinwoo, his father. So it would sound like this. "Why did you betray me?" And then this is the part that Jinwoo couldn't hear, but you see that he said three things as he was dying. Song Jinwoo, his father. So I don't think there's anything to that, but it was interesting nevertheless. Now, as if there hadn't been enough monkey wrenches thrown into our theories here, Go-Gun-Hee says he got in touch with the will of the great being, probably the fragment inside of him, and the most brilliant light itself or something. It connects back to that. I'm guessing there's a singular most brilliant light, if there's fragments of it, you know, inhabiting people. So, he said he saw our common enemies. He saw who they were. Well, it's already pretty unheard of for a fragment to work with a sovereign, but let's not call Jinwoo a sovereign for now. Let's say he saw the humans' common enemy. But what if it's not just the humans, but all denizens, the monsters whom they supposedly cannot coexist with? If they didn't have the voice telling them to kill humans, which the rulers put into them, they would coexist and team up, probably, against a common enemy. So I see three factions now, possibly four. The rulers, those who borrowed the ruler's power, which we don't know how they did that. It might not have been through the rulers, it might have been through something else giving it to them. So they could be a completely separate thing, and they seem to be humans who don't know exactly what's going on. Then there's the sovereigns. Then there is the fragments of the most brilliant light, or you could say the most brilliant light itself, which I think are associated with the great being or beings that Goguen-He talked about. Now this is where we try to form a complete theory, but it's very, very hard based on what we know. Goguen-He said that when he got in contact with the will of the great being, the gates are not for the rulers to carry out their purpose, but the great beings are doing it for the humans' protection. So this makes it really hard to understand now, because what we thought before is now getting retconned, basically. Or rather, the King of Giants actually thought he knew the truth of it, but the great beings obviously know more. So, how does this work out? And what's it have to do with the 9 Magispheres? The only thing that could know so much like the system and have all these different monsters and sovereigns and everything and categorized and can create instant dungeons like the system, I think is the most brilliant light itself. Because the fact that a fragment of the most brilliant light picked Goguen-He, knowing his body was no good, or rather it picked Goguen-He and made his body no good with some kind of reaction or something, not completely sure, but it seems like the most brilliant light fragment that chose him already knew his body was bad, and yet it chose to choose him because of some kind of disposition he had to make the Hunters Association, which would eventually find some kind of chosen one, which would eventually find the future Jinwu, and he could gather there at the Hunter Association. And so that the purpose of the fragments was to form Hunters Associations all around the world. So there's 9 fragments and 9 Magispheres, and all of those fragments, more or less, became some of the most powerful hunters or influential people in the world. I think their job was to gather hunters or to get near top rank hunters or whatever, so that when the chosen one, the player, Jinwu, came into this world, that he would gather toward where those lights were. And then they were probably planning on something, but who knows, maybe the rulers threw a monkey wrench in their plans too, and they weren't able to fully do that. So I think the great beings can hack reality, and they've created the system. Somehow they had this angel statue in Dual Dungeon pass that on to Jinwu, although the angel statue probably didn't know exactly what it was doing. But what's the connection there? It's crazy to think about the connections. So the connection here is the angel statue to the system. Now, the angel statue was in a dual dungeon, and it seemed like it had betrayed the rulers and was working for the sovereign. We saw that the rulers had 6-winged angel generals in their army, but now we're finding out that the great beings are working through the rulers. So the rulers think they're doing the dungeon thing for the purpose of injecting magic energy for their big war, but now we find out that the great beings really are working through the rulers, and that would explain why the angel statue was linked to the system and why there was angels in that army. The great beings are being sneaky, and they're working through the rulers for a different purpose altogether, and the rulers haven't figured that out yet. And the biggest factor to that is Jinwu. And the sovereigns, they're pretty intense themselves. I think everyone's fighting over territory and domain. There's only 9 Magispheres. Those are going to become massive gates, and it's going to belong to a territory. It's going to become a territory. They're going to try to inhabit the world. They want to wipe out the humans. They want to have a battle there for territory, and only 9 people can become the new rulers there. Maybe rulers are the next step up from sovereigns. They used to be sovereigns themselves on a different world, and then they had battles in the Chaos World, and that world got turned into this place. There's people inhabiting zones there. There's 9 rulers over there or something, and now they need 9 new rulers on this new Earth, so they're gonna fight for domain, possibly. But I'm calling it right now. That Shadow Sovereign, the real one, he seems to be a pretty interesting character. I feel like that guy's a wild card, and I think that's why Jinwoo got his power, because it's an awesome power, very nifty, and Jinwoo's also a wild card. Jinwoo is the Great Being's secret weapon. He is the variable that the Sovereigns are not ready for, and he's on the side of humans. The Great Beings don't want humans to die. They've seen this thing, they've seen the Chaos World get turned upside down. Those monsters were probably living at peace at one time, and then the rulers swept in there and they had 9 Magispheres in that Chaos World and everything got ruined. Now the same thing's happening to Earth, and these great beings, they're sick of seeing it happen. But at the same time, these great beings lack some sort of mobility. They lack some sort of capability. They can do certain things in certain capacities that are straight up seem broken, but at the same time it seems like they're trapped somewhere, if you get what I'm saying. So, Jinwoo, you need to level up some more, my friend. He's got all his shadow people, his little shadow warriors in everyone's shadows, so if the Sovereigns attack, he'll be there. It's coming down to Jinwoo versus that blonde Sovereign. That's going to be a savage battle. But the longer the blonde Sovereign waits to jump on Jinwoo, the stronger he's going to get. So, it's getting intense. It's getting intense. So that's my theory. I think there's 4 different factions. You got the rulers, the ones who borrowed their power somehow, not necessarily the rulers doing. You got the fragments, the 9 fragments, the 9 Sovereigns, the great beings, who are a part of the most brilliant light themselves. The Magispheres are going to turn to gates, I think. Not a dungeon, a straight up massive gate. And they're going to try to come through, and at that time, the Sovereigns want to be on Earth with their armies gathered. They want to get those rulers out of there. They want to beat the rulers so that the rulers can keep, possessing and ruling over the denizen Chaos World. But the Sovereigns, they want Earth. They want to rule Earth for themselves. So they want to become rulers in their own right, I guess. But just wait, Jinwoo is going to meet the real Shadow Sovereign, and they're going to do something. They're going to look at each other and be like, whoa. And they might team up, and Jinwoo's about to try to protect all those fragments of light, and then the fragments of light might gain, they might intertwine with the humans and the hosts, and the human hosts and the fragments of light may finally merge and get some knowledge and get to use their powers. And Jinwoo, I don't know, he might actually be able to talk to the system eventually. The system might just pop up a message, and it might say, will you converse with the system? And then he'll have like 5 minutes to ask the system anything, and we're going to get a ton of answers super quick. And then, the system can always just give Jinwoo a random power-up. We keep thinking, or lately anyway, we keep thinking he just needs to level up and he's going to get more powerful. But you never know when the system's just going to be like, yo, you want a job change? Here's another instant dungeon. I don't know, so it's about to get crazy. There's going to be a war. That's inevitable. There's no way they're going to stop that war. The humans are probably going to have to all go to one place and hide somewhere. It's hard to believe Jinwoo can protect all 9 of those gates. So there was 9 fragments, and they were around the 9 Magispheres. They were supposed to somehow wake up their knowledge and protect those Magispheres. But Go-Gun-Hee, he wasn't able to protect that Magisphere over Seoul. That was a failure because of his body. So that thing helped him create the association. It put that will into him, and that would attract strong hunters who could protect the humans when the Magisphere over Seoul turned into a gate. So I think the 9 fragments were sent to protect the humans when the Magispheres turned into gates against the rulers. And that didn't work so well. And then the Sovereigns, they were also able to do some kind of reincarnation thing and get into the human world, and now they want those gates for themselves. They want that territory. So things were not going so well for the great beings in their plan against the rulers. But then Jin Woo is the ultimate variable. I don't know what happened. Is there a 10th great being and just nobody knows what's up with that guy, and then all of a sudden he's like, alright, I'm gonna help out my boy Jin Woo, the weakest E rank here, and he's gonna do something. If all 9 of those gates open up simultaneously, it's gonna be crazy. The sovereigns technically are gonna fight against the rulers at those gates, but the sovereigns don't care about humans. They don't care about protecting humans. They don't care if they live or die. They just want to knock out the 9 fragments and take that territory away from them so that they can fight the rulers. The sovereigns want to fight the rulers. So the sovereigns and the fragments should team up. However, I think if the fragments and the humans, their vessels, combine their wills, that they would not like the sovereigns. Something about the sovereigns are not good. I think the fragments want to protect the humans and the sovereigns don't. That's the biggest thing. That's the biggest reason they can't team up against the rulers. And the rulers just want to wipe them all out and claim another universe for themselves. So I feel there's a crazy great being beyond the great beings, or beyond the most brilliant light, or rather, maybe there's great beings. Oh, I don't know anymore. But I've laid out a theory for you. It's going to be a battlegrounds, and the sovereigns want to fight the rulers from the Earth's side, and they need to get the fragments out of there, because the fragments are the ones that are supposed to protect those Magisphere gates that are coming. The only thing that's hard to say is it's like the most brilliant light already sent out 9 fragments, but their plan kind of fell through. So then where does Jin Woo come through? Jin Woo comes from the great beings, but are the great beings not the most brilliant light? It's weird. So the great beings are working through the rulers, and they created the system for Jin Woo. Okay guys, that's it for now. We've hashed it out as far as we can. I've had to make many conspiracy theory-like connection worksheet things. It was really fun. I love thinking about all the details. Yeah, so feel free to join the discussion. If I missed anything, let me know. Any more connections or any of that. If you noticed something I didn't, I'd love to hear it. Yeah, I said a few things multiple times, but that's just because I'm trying to think it out right here and right now as well. And yeah, I think we got a good theory going. Maybe the rulers have already ruined the Chaos World. Maybe they came from a whole nother universe, and then now they're trying to take over Earth, but the sovereigns don't want that. The sovereigns want to become rulers over Earth. So yeah, I got it all laid out in there. Hopefully some of my predictions are right. That would be really cool. And Jin Woo, keep leveling up, man. We love you. You're so broken. Peace.